Hola, ¿cómo están? Buenas noches. Hoy es miércoles 10 de marzo. Son 6:07. Un poquito de confusión con el tiempo de nuestro invitado de hoy, que es el señor Ron Moss. For those of you speaking English, today is Wednesday, March 10th, 6 p.m. We had a little bit of confusion with our times, but we are now going live to talk to Mr. Legendary Ron Moss.
Wow, legendary.
Well, I was trying to make a grandiose entrance.
I'm just a trombone player.
Well, and very good at it as well, right?
I don't know about that, but yeah.
So being a trombone player, how did it start for you? The interest in music itself as a trombone, I guess, first of all.
Well, actually, I started playing when I was about 16, and I was listening to a guy called Lonnie Donegan, which you may or may not know. He was It was famous for skiffle in England, and he played with a band called the Chris Barber Jazz Band. And Chris Barber was the trombone player.
Okay.
He actually died last week.
I know. I saw that in your Facebook. My condolences. Hey.
But I got to meet him at the North Sea Jazz Festival. Oh, I don't know, in the 90s. And I'm standing at the Bel Air Hotel, and we're standing at the desk checking in, and I look over, and there's Chris Barber. And I got to meet him and talk to him, and he took me that night. He was sitting in with a band called the Dutch Swing College Jazz Band, and we spent the whole evening together. So that was very memorable for me. But that was many years ago, and that's how I started playing trombone.
And you played in the circus, I guess, in the city. You're from England. What's the town you're from? I'm
from Birmingham, England.
Birmingham, okay.
And we had a good band. It was called the Mick Lewis Jazzmen, and we won the national contest with the ballrooms called the Locarno Ballroom, which was in Birmingham and all over the country. Mm-hmm. And we won the contest, and I don't know what happened, but we didn't go much further.
You just won the contest and good.
I don't know. But that started me playing trombone, and I got serious, and I took lessons and tried to learn to play,
Was that your only instrument that you were into it? Was there any other one that
I played a little? I played some guitar and banjo, and then actually there was a point where I also started playing bass because I couldn't get any work as a trombone player.
Uh-huh.
So I played bass guitar, and that was fun.
Bass guitar. Were you better at the trombone or as a bass?
Trombone player, yeah.
And then you how did that career progress as from being a musician and then getting into the business of?
I moved to London, and we started playing different places in London. There was a club circuit, which consisted of 8 pubs, I think, around London. And the bands used to go from one club to the other and do a week. We were primarily based at a club called the Londoner, which actually got blown up. We weren't there, but it got blown up by the IRA at one point.
Oh.
Pretty dangerous times.
Yeah. Different times.
Yeah, different times. Well, not much different.
Well, yeah, you're right.
And then I went to America in 1975, I think it was. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I landed in Los Angeles. I took my trombone. I played my bass. We had some gigs around LA.
So you would play around the LA area?
Yeah, well, we did a place called $2 Bills in Los Angeles on Franklin, and we played a place in Santa Monica, which was a Scottish club, all Scottish people. That was good. And that was when I actually started working with Chick. I knew Neville Potter.
Uh-huh.
Potter was the lyricist on a lot of the early songs, like Some Time Ago.
Okay.
A bunch of the songs. He was the poet that wrote those songs. But I'd lived with him and his wife in America, in Birmingham, and we were great friends. And I asked him if I had 10 cents, literally 10 cents, And I called him in New York from a Denny's in Los Angeles on 3rd Street. And I said, Neville, please, you got any work? I'm desperate.
I only have 10 cents left.
Well, the 10 cents was a phone call. He had to call me back because 10 cents wasn't enough.
I know, right? Because the time wouldn't last that long.
Yeah. So, but I was living in LA and I wasn't legal. I was a legal alien. I was a wetback. I swam across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm sorry, Ron, we just hired a new tour manager. And I said, oh, crikey. Anyway.
And that was just you trying to crack that something, getting into doing something else besides just playing, right? Just getting some gig.
I was selling meat in the Mojave Desert. I was painting houses. I was broke. Literally broke. Anyway. And about a week later, he called me back and he said, look, we just fired the new tour manager because he was doing drugs. And Chick had a no drugs policy. And he said, yeah, we're going to come out and see you. And about a week later, he came out and with his wife, who was the actual manager of Return to Forever, Leslie Wynn Potter. And we went to see Rollerball at the Cinerama Dome. And then we went to Musso Frank's on Hollywood Boulevard, which is a very famous restaurant. And we got on well, and they offered me the job. And about 7 days later, I flew to New York in my terrible suit, and it looked awful, and my trombone and bass guitar and everything, and landed in New York. They picked me up, and that was the beginning of my career with Chick.
Was that something that you kind of knew? I mean, since working in different bands and, being part of the circuit, I guess, among musicians, that kind of gave you that knowledge of being a tour manager, that you kind of figured it out? I
had no knowledge. I'd actually seen Chick and the band play at Ronnie Scott's with Joe Farrell and Airto. Flora wasn't there because she got busted for drugs. And then I saw the band at the Rainbow Theatre with Bill Connors, the Return to Forever band. I was a big fan. And then I landed in New York, and Neville Potter, the lyricist, if you look, he's the lyricist on a lot of those early songs, said to me, well, Ron, you got 12 days to put this tour together. And there was another tour manager prior to me who'd written this incredible write-up on how to be a tour manager. We call it a hat write-up, and it was literally everything you had to do to put a tour together. I read the hell out of it. I had 12 days to put the tour together, and we opened at the Westchester Theatre. Return to Forever opened to Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and that was my first date with the band. And
so it pretty much gave you a little template of how to build it up.
Oh, it was brilliant. The write-up is brilliant. I had it for years. I don't know where it is now, but it was a brilliant write-up. And, it's complicated to put tours together. It's not easy. And we went off and we did tour the U.S. And then I was illegal. So I had to get paroled out of the country through an immigration attorney. And I went to see, my father was very ill, and I went and I put in this request to be paroled. And you don't know how hard it is to get around the U.S. immigration system, but we paroled me out to Europe.
I know. Actually, I'm a legalized U.S. citizen, so I know kind of the process that comes with a resident alien or student.
Oh, and then my goodness. Anyway, I went to Europe, and the band toured all around Europe. Then I went to see my father, who died not long after that. But and then I came back into the U.S., and this extraordinary thing happened. As I came through customs at JFK, the immigration guy stamped my passport okay to work. And I was okay to work. And off we went.
Wow.
And that was, the band had Al Di Meola. Bill Connors had left, the guitarist. Al Di Meola was now the new guitarist. And the band was incredible. I mean, every night listening to that band was such a joy for me.
I was going to ask you that. How was it to hear those, musicians live, monsters every night?
I used to introduce them. I'd announce them wherever we were in the world, and they were just so brilliant. I mean, since Chick died a couple of weeks ago, there's been a lot of Facebook posts and everything. And if you look at the old grey whistle test, which we did way back, I mean, it's just amazing music. It was just amazing.
What was the backbone of that band going into tour? Was a lot of, I guess the sound engineer and light engineer and yourself, and maybe a guy on stage?
We had a great crew. I was responsible for putting the crew together. We had a great crew. Dave Leonard was the sound mixer. It was a great crew. And we toured all around the world, really. I mean, it was amazing. But then in 1976, I think it was, Chick decided he wanted to change the band up.
Uh-huh.
And he kind of split with Lenny and Al. Stanley stayed in the fold. And, we formed the new band, really. And it was very complicated. And he fired Neville and Leslie. He fired his managers, basically.
So, and you kind of
I was the one left. I was just sitting there at the desk. And at that point, we had an office in Long Island, in Plainview, Manetto Hill Road. And I just was the guy left at the desk. I mean, nobody else was there. Chick wasn't, I don't know where Chick was. I think he was in Florida. And I was left holding the bag, And I guess I was the manager, but I wasn't officially the manager, but I was.
You were secretary, answering phones, doing everything.
No secretary.
Running the office. I mean, just taking care of whatever's coming in,
So I did an interesting thing, though. I called Bruce Lundvall. We had at that point, the Return to Fairyland band had a contract with Columbia, CBS. And each individual had a contract with another record label. Like Chick was on Polydor. Stanley and Lenny were on Nemper Records, run by Nat Weiss, who was the attorney for the Beatles. And Al DiMillo had a contract on CBS. So they all had their individual contract. And then there was the contract with CBS for the band. And Bruce Lundvall was the president of CBS at that point. And I called him and I said, look, Bruce has died since. He also, after CBS, he went to Blue Note and ran Blue Note as the president for many years. He was a fabulous guy. And I said, look, I need help. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm sitting here at this desk and I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so I met with him in New York at that famous restaurant. I always forget the name, but it had jockeys out front. A line of jockeys. I don't know if you know about it. Anyway, I met with Bruce and we sat for 2 or 3 hours and he literally told me what to do. And that's how I started to learn. Then I met with Joe Zingzat, who was the lawyer for Madonna and everybody else and us. And he told me a whole bunch of stuff and I began to learn the ropes of being a manager.
Now, when you mentioned that you had all these different artists had different contracts, how did that work out when you had to record and tour and all that stuff? I mean, but must have been kind of a understanding with all the different labels just to get them on.
It got very complicated. I mean, I basically looked after Chick and Return to Forever. And Chick did a record called The Leprechaun. I don't know if you remember that. And that was for Polydor. That was my first recording project with Chick. That was a great project. Bill Watrous. There was so many great players on those records. Anthony Jackson, the bass player, he was amazing. And we did The Leprechaun. And then I think we'd already made Romantic Warrior. By the way, that's the gold record for Romantic Warrior behind
you.
You see it?
I have a bulb in the background noise. It's obstructing us.
What's that?
Not a record.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the gold record for Romantic Warrior.
Uh-huh.
Selling 500,000 records. And
how many of those do you have at home?
only that one. Anyway, we'd made Romantic Warrior. It was very successful. And then Chick had then changed the band. So we went out with Stanley, a brass section, Gail singing, and that was the beginning of the Music Magic Band. And then Alan Lenny had left, and away we went,
Was that all the projects around involved around Chick's decision, and he would choose whoever joined in and collaborated on whatever they're trying to do?
It was a difficult time. I mean, I don't know why Chick changed his mind and wanted to change the band. I mean, that Electric band was amazing, and it actually did tours in 2005 and did 2 reunion tours. It was very successful. After I'd left Chick in 2001, but then we had the band, and Chick was doing incredible projects. My Spanish Heart, the Mad Hatter record. I mean, amazing projects,
And then you became also involved in
We moved from New York to Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. So you were now it was closer.
I moved the whole operation from New York to Los Angeles, which was quite a task, actually.
Was it more practical because of the musicians around the LA area?
Chick wanted to live in LA. I think he'd had enough of New York. And I had to move like 3 grand pianos and all the equipment.
Easy piece of cake.
Oh, yeah, that's really it. And we got an office in Canyon Drive, and Chick bought a house, which later got sold. I think it got sold to Natalie Portman. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
But and we've also started the Mad Hatter recording studio. Well, we didn't start it then, actually. That started a few years later. But, we started with them. Later, they started the Mad Hatter recording studios.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that was his home base now for doing all his projects.
Now we are in LA, yeah.
And then you also that band kind of drifted into what became the Electric band, or like I was saying, it was in different projects.
We had a 13-piece band with a 5 brass section, which was John Thomas from the Count Basie Big Band, and then James Beasley from the Boston Pops Orchestra. Jim Pugh was the trombone player. I was the second trombone player, and Dave Liebman was the sax player. And we toured, Australia. We toured Europe, and I played with the band at that point, which was kind of wild. I wasn't really good enough, but I had an inside track. And we toured the world with that band. And then Liebman left, and we brought Joe Farrell in for the US part of the tour, and that was the 13-piece band. Then that developed. Chick and I parted company for 2 years. He brought in another management company, which ended up ripping him off and owing him money. And I came back in 82, and that's when we came up with the idea of the Electric band. And we started the Electric band, which was originally Scott Henderson, Chick, Dave Weckl, and John Patitucci.
How do you find those monsters, or that combination of musicianship into? Was that something that was that being around the area that you guys?
They were beginning monsters at that point. They weren't known as monsters until, I mean, they were amazing musicians, but I mean, they weren't known at that point. We had to do the Electric band and get them known before they became monsters.
Yeah.
And so the Electric band started, and then we had the Acoustik band, which was actually very successful with John Patitucci, Dave Weckl. A lot of people loved Chick playing piano, and within the Electric band, it wasn't quite the same piano-wise.
Yeah.
So people loved Chick playing acoustically, so we started the Acoustik band, spelled with a K.
Yeah.
And that was very successful. And
how many records of that the Acoustik band was?
Acoustik band did, and one live, one that went to #1, Actually, 1 second, I'll show you something.
Sure.
This was the first record.
Yeah. Correct.
And that's the Billboard #1 record chart. So that was very successful. That's on my wall.
That's 90, 88, 89?
Yeah, that's right. You're right, actually. 88, 89, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 1989. Yeah. #1. Anyway, so that was very successful. The electric band continued. We switched off between the electric band and the acoustic band. And we were living in LA, and I was then I started managing Dave Weckl. I got him a deal on GRP. I got John a deal. I got Frank a deal on JVC. Eric Marienthal was on GRP. And I started to expand my management company at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I was managing more artists than just Chick.
I know you kind of explored into Isaac Hayes is one, and I saw you have.
Yeah, I met Isaac and took him on. That was a fabulous relationship. I love that. I actually played a concert with Isaac on trombone.
Oh,
I got to play all the shaft and all those arrangements.
I met him once, and it was a great band. It was, I guess, in his later years, but the band sounded great, and it was just a great show, just live.
Unfortunately, he died when he was working out on a walking machine. Fortunately, Isaac was a fabulous guy. I mean, Isaac was the legend that he was. He was really amazing.
Yeah, but his whole presence is just like
ridiculous. Yeah. We toured Europe. I mean, I learned a lot about racism when I worked with Isaac, because I'm from England. We toured Europe. I mean, I learned a lot about racism when I worked with Isaac. I've got a delay going on.
Yeah.
I'm from England.
Maybe you open your Facebook page, and that's how it's.
What happened? I learned a lot about racism when I worked with Isaac. I've got a delay going on.
Yeah.
England. Oh, what happened?
You open your Facebook page, and that's how it's.
Yeah, it's actually. Yeah, what do I do?
I guess just leave one tab open.
Oh, you open your Facebook page, and that's how it's. Yeah, it's actually. Yeah, what do I do?
I guess just leave one tab open.
Hold on a second.
No problem.
It's very weird. It's talking to me. Okay, let me go back and close one of them, right?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm back. Okay, great.
We're good.
Yeah, so what I mean about learning about racism is that, all of Isaac's musicians were black. I mean, they were American. And I remember this one incident in Germany where I tried to check the band in, and the band was standing behind me, and I was at the desk, and this German woman wouldn't take us in. I was flabbergasted. I didn't know what to do. We got a flight coming up, so we left, and I sent the band to the restaurant, and I went back on my own to another agent, and I checked the band in with her, and then she didn't know they were black. So, but that was the kind of scene. Well, I'd had incidents of that earlier when I was with Lenny and Stanley. We were checking in hotels in Nashville, and they wouldn't check me in because the two guys were black. I mean, it was horrendous. We went across the street to the Holiday Inn, and I told the guys to wait outside, and I checked them in. And then we went to our room. I gave them their room keys. But I mean,
I can't imagine just the feeling of frustration.
Well, I'd never seen discrimination like that before. I mean, literally, people wouldn't check you in a hotel because you were black. And you wouldn't check you on a plane because you were African American. It was so disgusting. I got so angry. I used to go ballistic at these guys. But,
How long did you manage Isaac Hayes?
I was with Isaac for about 6 years, I think.
Oh, quite some time. But but the agency you mentioned, Isaac Hayes, Mick Fleetwood, I believe, and who else
Well,
did you?
the Mick Fleetwood thing occurred. I told you earlier that I was away from Chick for a couple of years in 1980, 81.
Yeah.
And at that point, I managed a band called the Corgis. The Corgis were enormously successful. They had a song called Everybody's Gotta Learn Some Breathe Sometime. And they went to number 3 on the Billboard charts. And I managed them. I was managing Mick Fleetwood and the Zoo. And believe me, that was a zoo.
How was that?
It's a zoo. But it was a great band. We did Saturday Night Live.
This is like a side project he had from Fleetwood Mac, I guess, before breaking out.
Kind of broken up at that point.
Well, that band kind of has this continuous lineup changes. Peter Green comes in, all that stuff.
Yeah, and Peter Green, and then, but he broke up the band and he formed the Zoo. Peter Benoit and a bunch of great musicians, and they all got busted on drugs and stuff. But eventually, Mick kind of straightened up and reformed Fleetwood Mac. I mean, that was what happened.
Yeah.
I didn't manage Fleetwood Mac. Oh, and at that point, I managed Bob Welsh. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
That was he was great. So those couple of years, I had my own management company, and then I went back with Chick in 81 or 82. And I think we formed the Electric band in 82.
So this is the look back then of the band, right?
There you go. Well, that was the eventual outcome of the band. Originally, it was Scott Henderson on guitar.
And then it was Frank.
And this Frank came in after Scott. There a lot of different things happened, Things changed. I don't know what to say.
When did you go to do touring with the band? What parts of the world, and what different venues did you all get to play at that memorable? Yeah,
everywhere. We played literally everywhere. I mean, we played Japan, we played Australia, we played everywhere. It was amazing. Yeah,
I mentioned those years 80, 86, 87, 89, 90s, because I at that point, jazz came into, as a group of friends we had. These guys became like our rock stars. We love rock, but these guys at some point were so big all over, and that were like rock stars because of the musicianship and their names and their skills and everything.
They were rock stars. Yeah. When we were touring England with Return to Forever, we had most of the members of Yes, Eric Clapton. They followed us around the country. They watched every show we did. They came to every show we did. They followed us around our tour.
Anytime they get together on stage or try to jump in on stage or no, none of that?
You couldn't sit in with Return to Forever.
Tambourine. But you played with some of these bands as well at some point, like a song or two with the trombone.
I played on a Stanley Clarke record, for one time. I played with Chick. That was about it, really.
Okay.
Then I didn't play trombone for about 15 years until 2010 when I bought another trombone when I moved in Florida. Now I play a lot.
So from managing and all that, then you became a record producer, and you were part of GRP, and then you had your own record label. And how did that transition?
Yeah, we started our own record label through GRP. Gruson Rosen Productions. That's how they started. So I said to Larry, why don't we have our own label, Chick and I? And he agreed, and we started Strech Records. And we made records with Bob Berg, Steve Wilson, Steve Davis. There was a band called Origin that Chick had. We recorded Steve Davis and Tim Wilson with Tim Garland. We did a lot of records. And then Larry sold GRP to MCA for a staggering $47 million, and closed down GRP. So we moved to Concord, and that's when I met Glenn Barris at Concord, and we did a deal with Concord. Mm-hmm. We released a lot of records on Strech through Concord, and it was a great label.
What surprises me back then is how, how profitable I guess would have, with the sales of CDs and at that time, because it was nothing compared to now. I mean, like I was saying, those guys became like rock stars at some point, and I can imagine that the sales and everything else of DVDs or videos.
That first Return to Era record has done out for ECM has done over 1 million units. I think that Romantic Warriors are going to reach 1 million units. I mean, these days nobody sells CDs.
Nothing. Yeah.
But people like John Patitucci were doing 150,000. Dave Weckl was doing 100,000 units. I mean, Eric Marienthal, they were very successful artists. I mean,
good numbers back then.
Very good numbers. And if you sell 100,000 CDs, that's a lot of money. At $15 a CD, that's at least 1.5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, the revenue was amazing at that point. But now nobody sells CDs. It's all streaming.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of kind of doing any kind of packaging on anniversaries on some of these records that you could sort of?
I don't control them. You have to be able to control the masters to be able to do anything. It's up to Chick or his estate whether they do what they do with them.
Oh, see, he controls. I mean, his music, but whenever you had on your label that you may have under control.
Yeah, but I'm no longer the label. Kind of folded.
Okay.
In control of those masters. Yeah.
Okay, so it would be a kind of difficult way to put together.
Because you're the producer doesn't mean to say you control the master. The artist controls the master. Oh, the record label controls them, I should say, actually. And
you also became a record producer, at that point with the label and all that. So you produce a lot of that.
Yeah. What is a record producer? He's the guy really that puts the money together. I mean, it's like a movie. You see all these producer credits on a movie. Well, they're all putting in money.
Yeah, they're investors.
That's why they're the producer. Yeah.
One thing is moving the knobs, and one thing is putting the table to move the knobs.
That's right. The producer is the guy that puts the deal together to be able to make the record. These they all have budgets. All these records. I mean, the Return to Forever budget was $250,000. Most of Chick's were $125,000, $150,000 to make the record.
Producing all that distribution.
Yeah. They were real. There was enough revenue from CD sales for record labels to pay you $125,000 to make a record.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the mechanics of it. That's how it worked. Now nobody sells CDs. All the income is streaming. And by the way, it's very good income, but
not for the artist.
No, not for the artist. You're right about that. And that has to change. That has to change. It's so unfair.
It's so unfair how, you can have 10 million plays and you only get 1050.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Something like that. Whatever the revenue is on how many plays you get.
It's actually disgusting that is the way it is.
Because they're still making billions out of the streaming service per se, but they're not sharing anything. They're just sharing, whatever they think is the value of the play of.
Well, there's a whole sort of movement now to people buying catalogs and buying streaming catalogs because the revenue is so high that you can make a lot of money. So there's a whole movement now to buying publishing catalogs or to buying
artists.
Because
repertoire.
Because the revenue is so high on streaming.
It's been like a latest trend of I guess Fleetwood Mac. They just sold some of that stuff, I guess, and different. I think was it Stevie Nicks or someone? One of them kind of sold out in the party.
Just did a $304 million.
Yeah, Beach Boys just did it.
$100 deal.
Yeah,
sold his publishing. Yeah,
done with it.
Well, how old is Bob Dylan? I guess he's not that young, is he? So what's the point? What are you going to do with it? You might as well sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess get your money back or return on investment, pretty much.
400 million is not bad, is it?
Yeah. Set for life for your, all your relatives and nephews and sons and everybody. Yeah, that's interesting.
The record business is very weird right now. It's very strange. Yeah.
Do you think it'll change at some point to make?
Well, I hope they bring the revenue up for the artists. It's got to come up. But the pandemic has really made things very difficult. I still manage artists. I still manage Kyle Eastwood, Jason Marsalis, and Down to the Bone out of England. I have 4 clients. But all the gigs are getting cancelled with the pandemic. I mean, we're supposed to start with Kyle in Europe on May 10th, but I don't know if it's going to happen or not. In other words, the gigs keep getting cancelled. I mean,
postponed, yeah.
Well, last year we lost all our gigs. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean,
how did the connection with Kyle Eastwood came with, about, he's Mr. Eastwood's son, but, was that a good thing or a bad thing, and how the connection became between you and him?
Well, it's fabulous. In 2001, Chick and I parted company, and I went to work with Steve Chapman, who's really more a smooth jazz manager. But Kyle came along, and I started managing him. I also had Gerald Albright, Jeff Lorber, David Benoit, a band out of England called Down to the Bone. And I worked in LA with Steve until 2010. And then the smooth jazz business fell apart. And I moved to Florida where my daughter lives. And I took Kyle with me. And I'd had a long relationship with him. I've been with him since 2001.
Oh, wow. 20 years.
And we do great. Yeah, we do great business, especially in Europe. He's very big in France. Yeah.
It's and like I said, it was that easier for him to get him into the door, as I say, because of his name or because of his talent, or the interest in seeing, hey, well, let's see how good he is. Or
certainly doesn't hurt to have your father as Clint Eastwood, and it does open the door for him. But the truth of it is that Clint he loves his children, but he doesn't do anything financially for them. They all have to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They have to make it their own way. Allison did, and so did Kyle, and so did, what's the new guy? I forget. Anyway, the point is that
it's just a name. Everything else is on their own.
Clint demands that you do it on your own, and Kyle did it on his own. It's not because of his father. But I will say that if your name is Eastwood, it does open the door.
Yeah. It's like a little bell that rings. Yeah.
He did a great record called Paris Blue. And Paris Blue was incredibly successful in France. And that established him in France. And now we play France, Germany, Italy. We do some shows in the Blue Note and places in America, but we also do Blue Note in Japan and Hawaii. And Brazil, and we've done Blue Notes all over the world. We have a good relationship with Blue Notes.
That's good. I was trying to get back a little bit when I first heard of you or had the opportunity and great chance to meet you guys when the Electric Band became the Electric Band 2, and we were able to. This is us, 1994, March 23rd. It'll be
Gary
a while.
Yeah, Gary Novak, Mike Miller. That's you.
Yeah. Yeah. Times have changed, my friend.
You look very different there.
Jimmy Earl.
Oh, Jimmy Earl was on back. Jimmy was great, wasn't he?
Yeah, he now plays with the Jimmy Kimmel Live Band.
I think he does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy's great. He does a great solo. We did a big compilation record, like one of these box sets. Oh, let's paint the world, right?
Yeah, paint the world.
We did this compilation, and I put together like a box set, and the track with Jimmy is live in Japan. He does this incredible bass solo, Jimmy.
Yeah, he's great. Funny how I met him that time, and like I was telling you earlier before we went live, that we got to hang out. I don't know if he came along with us to a couple of lunches and dinners, or we had a couple of drinks and all this stuff. And then Jimmy, for some reason, I kind of kept in touch. We exchanged phones. We talked maybe a couple of times. And then here where I'm at in McAllen, Texas, which is the last city down the border in Texas. He came down to play with Colin Haywood from Men at Work. And he recognized me, from, I can't explain. He goes, yeah, I know you are. So, so it was funny to kind of see him again years later from that.
Jimmy's a great guy. Yeah. When I was living in LA in 2003, 4, 5, he used to play at the a cafe called the Cafe Cordial, which had live music every night. It was an amazing place. It was free. And Jimmy was in a lot of the bands,
That band was really good as well. I guess Gary Novak became a more like a rock drummer later on with Alanis Morissette, I believe.
He was the real drummer on Green Day and a bunch of other rock records. But he said that the highlight of his career was playing with Chick. He had a great name for Chick. Gary was a very funny guy.
Oh yeah, he was a funny guy. He was like
so he called Chick. Now get this, he called him Guy Taiwan. Chick Corea, Guy Taiwan. It was absolutely hysterical. I mean, it was so funny. Anyway, that's a silly thing, I guess.
No, yeah, I mean, it was like 2-3 days, and then you guys played a couple of nights over there, and we got to hang out. And I remember smoking outside the theater with Chick a couple of times, and I guess you were there. I mean, it's just for us, like I said, jazz became for a while like a rock.
It was a rock thing. It was a phenomenon, wasn't it? Yeah, I know.
And it was like very exciting for us being part of that, and also being involved not just as fans, but also being picking you guys from the airport, and just it was an experience as a kid. We were like very young, and it was fun to do and be part of that.
I mean, in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, we played to 150,000 people. We had to have police escort in and out of the venue. I mean, it was enormous. We were like rock stars. Yeah.
Was there anybody in the band that you had to take care of the most? Was it like a troublemaker?
Not really, no. We had a lot of fun.
But
nobody was trouble. And nobody did drugs.
You mentioned that. I noticed.
Drank, but nobody did drugs. They chased girls and things like that. But we had a lot of fun.
Plus, if you have these looks, I mean, come on.
Yeah, they're pretty good looking, yeah. Well, Eric was married. Eric Marienthal's been married for many years. John has a beautiful wife, Sasha. Weckl has a beautiful wife. Frank has a great wife. They were all very straight kind of guys. They played it.
I mean, you can tell just by the way they play. They're very dedicated. So I guess their lifestyles have to be as well the same.
That's why the band lasted so long. It's because they were pretty stable guys.
After we lost Chick this year, has there been any kind of talks that you've been heard of or not? That we've lost so many musicians during the last couple of years, and
it's terrible, isn't it?
And from all walks of of music. Has there any talks of maybe doing some kind of a tribute or some kind of a for him at some point, getting all these musicians that have been part of his career?
Not in control. Literally, I never spoke to Chick since 2001. He never spoke to me again, although I met him.
Yeah.
He would never talk to me again. I'm not in control of any of that. But there's been some great tributes online, hasn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the number of guys. I mean, I'm 76 years old now. I'm 77 in May. I guess people die when you're this age.
I tell you, my dad is 88, and he's in great shape. Just he looks good as you look. So, and he's awesome. And he outlived COVID. So
yeah, but I lost Lee Konitz. Wallace Roney was one of my clients. He died of COVID. Ralph Peterson died. I mean, there's a lot of guys gone. It's incredible.
Well,
it's so disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when they're among your peers or people that you know and you work with, and then I've had friends also that I've lost, younger and older, that it's been kind of difficult, especially during these times.
It's terrible. I mean, I got my second vaccination on Monday. I'm very excited to say. So, I hope I'm okay.
You're good to tour. Huh? You're good to tour.
I guess.
Now, can we talk a little bit about your daughter, Elizabeth
Oh,
Ross, which I know she's a great actress and great talent. Now, was being her your daughter put her into the door, or because you had some connections at some point of many?
I was nothing to do. She started acting when she was 5 years old, and she's so motivated and she's so brilliant. I mean, I had very little to do with it other than I financed it all. Other than that, it wasn't. She was very self-motivated, and when she got West Wing, and she went to Mad Men, and now she's on this. Oh, the season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale starts on April the 28th. Did you know that?
No.
The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu.
So you watch? You keep a track of all the different? I mean, do you watch your daughter everything?
I watch everything she does. She's so brilliant. The new movie Invisible Man. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm. Oh, I mean, we have some little time sometimes just to catch up with TVs and movies and so many different services and streaming and music and all that. So we try to catch up as much as we can.
She's amazing. She's the joy of my life. I love her very much. She's a great actress. And but she did it herself. Really, she was the one that did it.
It's her career, her accomplishments, your biggest accomplishment as in your career as a musician and everything.
Nothing to do with it.
No, but I mean, as a proud father, saying what, all my work is in.
She has a great manager called Gay Ribisi. She, I have nothing to do with it. I'm a music manager. Maybe I gave her a sense of humor. We used to listen a lot to Monty Python and a lot of those kind of British
cheeky humor.
So maybe I gave her some sense of humor.
So what are your plans once this whole thing hopefully gets us everybody out?
We're hoping to start work in May, but
you mentioned that,
But I think the summer festivals in Europe are going to start to happen. They'd say that, a lot like Marciac and a Jazz in Vienna, they're going to do instead of 7,000, they do 3,500 and socially distancing. So maybe we'll get started again in the summer. I hope.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, there's no business. I mean, it's gone,
Yeah, it's been a rough year for musicians and touring. And
do the Blue Note in Japan every year, and we can't go to Japan. I mean, you can't fly to France right now. You can't go into France. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And if you land in England, you got to quarantine for 14 days in a hotel.
So you got to plan for having a long stay just to get the quarantine time in order to travel around.
You can't afford to do that. You can't stay in a hotel for 14 days and then play a gig.
It's going to pay 2 days.
Yes. I mean, how much does a hotel cost every night? There's a basic thing whenever you do gigs, you have to do budgets and you have to plan these things.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the artist loses money. I mean, let the artist lose money.
You mentioned, was it Brazil that you had how many thousand? 100?
Oh, in Sao Paulo, it was 150,000 people in an outdoor venue. That was ridiculous.
Was it a festival or on their own, or how kind of a
festival? Yeah, huge festival. Yeah.
Wow.
And then we did Rio, and we did Brasilia. We did all these Brazilian cities. Yeah.
Well, and what is your best memories out of those tours? Was the crowd? Was it the band? I guess the most joy was listening to the band. So many great musicians every night.
I watched the movie Amadeus the other night. Do you know Amadeus? Yeah. And there's a middle part of the movie where they feature Mozart's piano concerto in D minor. Now, Chick recorded that, and I remember the first concert where he played it live. I mean, Chick was an amazing, amazing person. He worked over 6 months, 15 hours a day learning that concerto. It's a very difficult concerto. It's a brilliant concerto. The Mozart Concerto in D minor. And I just remember that first concert we did. What a special moment that was. And actually, that's one of the highlights of my life, is watching Chick play the Mozart D minor. And he did it brilliantly. And he did his own. I don't know if you know about this in classical music, but there's a standard cadenza you're supposed to play.
Mm-hmm.
Chick didn't play the standard cadenza. He did his own cadenza, which was incredibly frowned upon. But most of the conductors went with him, and he would do his own cadenza. And that was very unusual. Nobody ever did that. You played the Beethoven cadenza, you played the Mozart cadenza, but Chick did his own cadenza, and that was brilliant. And
Wow.
I just remember watching Amadeus. It reminded me just of that moment.
Of that moment.
Yeah, it was a special moment.
Kind of unfortunate that you mentioned that you were in touch with him even in his last days. I guess he passed away suddenly, or he was not aware of that he was ill.
No, he was aware that I heard that he knew. You know, he had this very serious cancer, and he didn't want to go back in the hospital. And that was it, really.
What a shame.
He died in Clearwater, yeah.
Wow.
Where I live.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible loss. I mean, it's hard to believe you're not going to see him play again. I mean, it's amazing, really.
Yeah, lucky enough that we got to see them, you know, at that point, and many other, you know, DVDs or videos, what have you, that he's just.
Well, we have a lot of recorded material, but it's not quite the same as watching the person play live, is it?
Never.
Never.
No matter how good of a sound, the DVD, how many the cameras, how many detail, you know, you make, you know, close-ups or whatever.
And he also, you know, Chick's improvisation is so inspired. I mean, I don't know what you think of his improvisation. But
I mean, it just, you know, because he could go off and just. You know,
into the Never Land.
Yeah. I had a chance of, by coincidence, that Al Di Meola once was in town, and he was we were at a bar, and he just jumped in, and same thing, he just went with the guitar and just grabbed the musician's guitar and went with it.
Well, these guys are geniuses, you know,
monsters, like we mentioned. Yeah,
Stanley and Lenny and Al, Chick, they're just amazing players. I mean, they're above us. Above me, anyway.
Ron, I appreciate your time. I apologize because of the time that we can figure out, but you know, we'll make it up, and we'll distribute and stream this great conversation. I appreciate your time. It took us a while to convince you. I appreciate the patience and.
I get embarrassed. I mean, it's hard to live a lot. You know, I've lived since. So by the side of so many famous people, it's kind of weird.
I know and then they ask you, it's like when they ask you about your friends, you know, they're not asking you, you know, you have to kind of talk about your, you know, moments in life that you spend with someone like Chick and or Weckl or whoever, you know, Isaac Hayes and all these
personal moments that you have.
Yeah. One last question that I just remembered. I saw you work with the Eurythmics at some point for some record.
Yeah, that was a great project. I went to London, and we put together this video project after Eurythmics had the big hit. You know, they started to break out, and we put together this live. Where was it? Live at, I forget where it was. Anyway, we put together this video project, and I met Annie and I met Dave Stewart. Annie was amazing. I loved her.
Great voice. Right?
Yeah.
Presence on stage.
The songs were great too. The connection on that was my friend Mickey Shapiro, who's the lawyer, was friends with the head of CBS in the UK, and I was sent over to put things together. That was in the period I wasn't with Chick. That was the 2 years in 81, 82, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that was a great project. Yeah. Yeah, it was an incredible project.
Yeah, it kind of threw me off because, you know, being a jazz involvement most of the times, and then I saw Mick Fleetwood, and then Eurythmics was the one that kind of knocked me out. Said, how did that happen?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, You know, I'm English. I love English rock and roll. I mean, I love English bands. You know, I mean, I've been a fan. I saw the Beatles live. I mean, all those bands.
Were you a Stones fan or a Beatles fan?
Oh, Beatles fan, yeah. Beatles, yeah.
There's always that
Yeah, but
rivalry.
you know, those songs were so great. I mean, there was a lot of great music came out, you know.
I just even today, just the craftsmanship of production that George Martin would put in those records. I mean, great songs, great songwriters, great musicians, or good enough for what they were written. But George Martin just knew how to mash it and build it.
We recorded it at the what you call it, studio.
Abbey Road.
We recorded at Abbey Road. We recorded the Spain and the Mozart D minor with orchestras at George Martin's studio, and he was there.
Wow.
And he came in the studio and he listened, and he was a great guy. Nice to meet at Abbey Road, yeah.
A gentleman, like, you know, a total English gentleman, yeah.
He was a genius, wasn't he?
Yeah, just the arrangements and production on those records. Like I said, great songs, right, everything, but just the thinking of how to use those 4 tracks into that sound was always something that.
4 tracks, believe me.
Well, you know.
That was the old days. No, there was.
Yeah, now it's
48 tracks.
How many tracks you want? We have.
We had, you know, the London Orchestra there. What was the name? Which orchestra was it? Anyway, we recorded at Abbey Road. It was amazing. 5 or 6 days. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time again. We appreciate all your kind words and memories, and hopefully we have another chance or more things to talk about once you go back on touring or playing. We can reconnect and you can tell us little stories from the road.
Talk when things end and we get back out on the road. That would be great.
Give us new perspective on how you saw things.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
How does it end?
Bye-bye.